Welcome to the GPLama YouTube channel, and today a discussion about my hands-on with some interesting bike tech that we first saw at Eurobike 2024 and at more recent bike trade shows such as Taipei Cycle and China Cycle just a few weeks ago. Now, this isn't exactly what I would call new tech. Wireless one-by group sets have been around for quite some time, and so has the Classified Powershift rear hub. Now, some quick background on what the Classified Powershift hub is. It's a 2-speed internal gear hub designed to replace the front derailleur, offering the benefits of a 2x drivetrain with the simplicity and efficiency of a physical 1x setup. The rear hub has two modes, a 1-to-1 direct drive mode equivalent to a larger chainring on a conventional 2x setup, and a 0.7-to-1 reduction mode, which simulates a smaller front chainring by reducing the gear ratio by approximately 30%. Now, shifting between these two modes with that rear hub is achieved wirelessly with a handlebar mounted shifter that communicates with the smart through axle, which contains a battery and a receiver, and the shift occurs internally within the hub. They say at around 150 milliseconds and can be performed under full load, pedaling up to 1000 watts. The Vistar 1x wireless group set by TRP fully integrates with the Classified Powershift system. Now, if you're familiar with how Shimano Di2 Full Synchro works, S2 mode they call it, where changing through the rear gears will at points shift the front chainring to give you a smooth gear ratio steppage, if that's a word. At a very high level, this is exactly what the Vistar group set does, but instead of having two front chainrings, it utilizes the two modes in the Powershift hub for the same result. In effect, making a physical 12-speed group set a 15-speed group set. But why not 2x12 equals 24? Well, they've removed the duplicated gear ratios. There's a 15-speed for gravel and 16-speed for road setups with this new group set. Now, here's a graph of some gear ratios that I did a while back when trying to visualize the duplicated gears with a Powershift system. I'm guessing it's these that have been removed from the 24 overall, giving us 15 or 16 for the road setup. And really, that's about it. Oh, there's also manual mode too, so if you want to access all 24 gears, you can with this integrated group set. Around a year ago, I was using the Classified Powershift hub with the Shimano GRX 1x gravel setup, and while it worked, it was the integration that let me down in a few areas. Firstly, it turned a 1x gravel bike into a 2x, so no longer was it as simple as up and down for gears, there was an additional button for different modes. Now, I found the physical gear ratios a little too close on the classified cassette as well. Now, of course, that's going to be dependent on the terrain that you ride in, but close ratios on mechanical GRX is a lot of work on hilly terrain. Dumping or jumping through gears was a lot more risky than it would have been had that been an electronic group set. There was also no easy way of knowing what hub mode I was in. You can't just look down like you can on a 2x and see what chainring that you're actually using. Now, you can pair the Powershift to your head unit to see what gear you're in with the Amp Plus shift profile, but that's also not optimal if you're already using a 1x electronic group set and your head unit will only allow you to pair one of those sensors. Now, having said that, there was a lot to like about it, such as the additional gear ratios, but there was some overhead. And a lot of that overhead is removed with the fully integrated Vistar group set. Firstly, a 1x group set remains a 1x group set in regard to shifting. It's up or down. Simplicity in shifting remains. The head unit or bike computer can display which gear ratio that you're in. The rear there is physical gears on the rear cassette, and the front gear is the Powershift mode that you're in. So those two things alone go a long way in addressing some of the hang-ups that I had in using the Powershift rear hub with a non-integrated group set. When it comes to pricing, I will refer to the video description below as I get more information. As you can appreciate, things in the US at the moment are a little, let's just leave it at that and go have a look at this group set in action, both indoors and out. Okay, here we are in the Llama Lab with a Vistar-equipped gravel bike, and all of the angles captured. This is the default configuration. I've left the button assignment and the gear configuration as is, as shipped. And as I step down through the rear gears here, you can see that represented on screen with the rear cassette. And we'll see at exactly which point the Powershift hub switches and what happens to the rear gears. Okay, so we're down to gear 6 on the back. We're going to gear 7. We go to gear 8. That clicks down, but we don't quite get to gear 9 because it goes back to gear 6 physically, but that Powershift mode has switched. And then from there, I step down as normal and I get to the hardest gear in that 1-to-1 ratio. All right, let's get all the way down and all the way back up to the point where it's going to mode shift again to the reduction mode. And it's this shift here. Instead of going to gear 3, it goes to gear 6. The shift takes place, and then I have to keep stepping up those gears to make things easier and easier and easier. So that's the up and down sequential shifting with the right shifter, but on the left, at any time, you can change that Powershift rear gear mode. So I was in the easiest gear on the back, the largest cog on the cassette, and I just put it to 1-to-1 ratio. I'm now stepping down the cassette, and there's no change. So you can't really trick this thing. You can override it though. And if I was to go back up the cassette there, it'll start doing its reduction mode at the same point as before. Right, on to a few other tests, and it's the speed test. How quickly does this thing change? It's pretty quick. And the final test is the back pedal test. How good is the chain line? And does cross-chaining, going biggie bigs, does it actually drop the chain off when I'm pedaling backwards quickly? No, it doesn't. It stays on. Good stuff. All right, let's get this outside. Okay, on to some of the steepest gradients that I can find off-road to put this to the test. And the Wahoo tracker radar detecting the drone following me. That's interesting. Alrighty, so I'm in 1-to-1 mode. We've gone down that hill. We're about to go up probably 15 to 17% gradient. And I start stepping up the physical gears on the back, and just there. Reduction mode has kicked in automatically. I'm only shifting with the right-hand side. And down to walking pace at 460, 470, 440 watts and grinding away. So out of the saddle here, I've got to be careful. That rear tire doesn't have a lot of grip on it. So back in the saddle and in the easiest gear. All right, traffic clear and down through the gears, over top of the bridge. And as we go to gear 8, gear 9, we'll initiate the change. There it is, back to 6, physical on the rear, 1-to-1 ratio, and across the bridge. Exiting off the old railway, there is a slight kicker to the left. Watch out for that pole. And reduction mode kicks in very, very quickly. And up I go again, 400 watts walking pace, putting this thing through its paces. And it performed, well, exactly as expected. Though there was an observation that I will talk about in just a few moments about when that mode change happens, because there are 2 shifts taking place. 1, the physical cassette change on the back, and 2, the classified power shift mode shift, where the 2 changes are designed to happen at the same time, but the experience on the bike, depending on your cadence, your speed, and the power you're putting out, feels, well, not quite seamless. So I put a few good hours on this group set over the last few weeks, and in summary, it works. There's no dropped chains, no missed shifts, and nothing jumping out at me as a major concern as showstoppers for this group set. So let's pull up some pros and cons of this, starting off with the pros. Look, it just works. You do get that wider gear ratio, and I found it's a much more intuitive implementation of the classified power shift technology. You don't really need to worry about what front mode that you're in. So there's less thinking required than just using the power shift hub alone on a run-by gravel bike. There's also no front derailleur. That goes without saying. That's what this is all about. And you can shift under load. There's no need to worry about if your next shift is going to be a front shift if you're familiar with full synchro mode. The power shift override also allows you to do a big step in gear changing if you need be with the other lever. The lever buttons can also be customized to your liking, and this also allows for closer gear ratios. Maybe a pro, maybe a con. There's a few different cassettes for this group set on both road and gravel to choose from. Also, the levers and brakes were fine. No issues at all there with their performance. On to the cons, and starting off with probably the biggest one of all. Look, this is a lot of hardware and cost to get just 2 more gears than, say, a SRAM Explorer 1x13 setup. There's also a proprietary cassette for the power shift hub. You have to use their cassette. The shift timing, now when there's a power shift mode change in that sequential shifting, it depends on your cadence and effort, but it can feel a little weird as the cassette shifts in the opposite way before the hub shifts modes. It doesn't happen exactly at the same time. Going up may get you a harder gear just for that microsecond, and it makes you wonder what's gone on. You can notice that actually happening. There's more batteries on the bike. Yes, the through axle has a battery as well. The PowerShift rear hub has return to base servicing. You can't do that yourself. They recommend around a 2-year servicing interval. And the levers from TRP have no auxiliary buttons or no bonus buttons for the shifters. That functionality is becoming super handy as more head units integrate more functionality with those buttons. So overall, my take on this is what the video title states. I think this is what the PowerShift system should have been all along. fully integrated into a group set, it's a really good use of this technology. But is this the perfect application for it on a gravel bike? And with that, I'm not sure. Look, I could see this being very useful for TT or triathlon bikes where sequential gear shifting without a front derailleur could be extremely useful. But again, that's course dependent. Anyhow, good to see Classified push their technology forward into this area with integration. And with that, thanks for watching. Eurobike is just around the corner. Stay tuned for that. It should be a very, very big few weeks. We'll see you soon.